He's the figure that lurks in the shadows of the underworld, yet his name is known across the galaxy. Boba Fett, feared, respected, and surrounded by mystery. A man of few words but boundless skill, his legend was forged in the fires of battle and hardened by cold, ruthless efficiency. From the desolate sands of Tatooine to the skies of Bespin, Fett's exploits are as elusive as the man himself. He's a bounty hunter, unlike any other, operating with a code only he understands. A faceless enigma beneath Mandalorian armor. He answers to no one, always one step ahead, and when he sets his sights on you, there's no escape. Discover the myth and mystery of Boba Fett, the galaxy's most infamous hunter.
You are listening to the Star Lords Podcast.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Are you stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder?
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Born Legacy.
Apart from his pay, which is considerable, Fett demanded only one thing: an unaltered clone for himself. Curious, isn't it?
Unaltered?
Pure genetic replication, no tampering with the structure to make it more docile, and no growth acceleration.
I should very much like to meet this Jango Fett.
I would be very happy to arrange it for you.
Boba was born, rather, made, in the sterile halls of Kamino, a clone of that era's most ruthless and feared bounty hunter, Jango Fett. Boba would be an identical genetic copy of his sire, unmodified and unchanged, unlike the millions of others who would go on to create the Grand Army of the Republic. Legacy and family are pillars of Mandalorian culture and heritage, and Jango, ever the bachelor, was given the unique opportunity, after being selected, to be the genetic template of the Republic Army. Receiving a considerable sum of credits, Fett also requested the clone that he would raise as his own son to fulfill his legacy and the legacy of Jaster Mariel and the true Mandalorian supercommandos, of which Jango was the last survivor. Jango would impart everything he knew, his culture, his tradition, his martial skills, to the boy. Fett was raised on Kamino by his father, Jango, with the help of the Kaminoan Taun We, who became a foster mother to him. Originally codenamed Unit A0050, he assumed his genetic donor's clan name, Fett, and was bestowed the name Boba. Though aware he was a clone, Fett often questioned his origins, but Jango reassured him that he was a true clone and his real son. Apart from the Claudite Zam Wessel, Taun We was the only female influence in his life. To Null Arc Captain Ordo, Fett was simply known as Little Jerk. Boba never attended school, instead learning from his travels with Jango and books from Tipoca City's library, where he favored titles on starfighters. Before the Clone Wars, Boba met Count Dooku, who had hired Jango for various bounties. On one mission to the planet Quat, Jango used Boba as bait to lure a target, scaring the boy into throwing a thermal detonator. After Jango eliminated the camp, the colonist Larbo, horrified at the tactic, asked what kind of man used his son as bait. Boba simply replied, quote, "Only a son can know his father's heart," end quote. Boba often joined his father in clone training sessions, learning combat skills and accompanying him on missions, including one where they assassinated a man with sensitive information about the clone army.
Orphan.
I see now I've done terrible things. But you started when you murdered my father. I'll never forgive you.
Well, you're going to have to.
Boba had an enthusiasm for vehicles and was intrigued and excited to see a Delta 7 Jedi starfighter when it arrived on Kamino. Little did the youngling know, it would set a chain of events that would change his life forever. Suspicious of the Jedi that disembarked, Obi-Wan Kenobi arrived at the Fett home to speak with Jango Fett in regards to the clones and the assassination attempts on Senator Amidala. Jango, sensing that the Jedi was onto him, donned his Mandalorian armor, ordered Boba Fett to gather his things, and the pair prepared to escape to Geonosis, where Jango would meet with his benefactor Count Dooku. During the escape, the Jedi Knight Kenobi was in hot pursuit, leading to a physical and ship duel between him and Jango as they fled aboard the Slave One spacecraft. The chase ended on the planet Geonosis and would soon be the site of the match that would ignite the Clone Wars. After the Jedi intervention on the planet to rescue Obi-Wan, Anakin Skywalker, and Padme Amidala, Jango Fett was forced directly into combat with the Jedi, a feat he had managed many times before. After slaying Jedi Master Coleman Trebor, Jango was engaged by Mace Windu, one of the most fierce and talented Jedi warriors of his era. Fett dueled the Jedi Master, but his jetpack malfunctioned due to an earlier trampling by a reek. Normally, he would bait the Jedi to get close with their lightsabers before engaging his jetpack to make a tactical retreat to a safer distance, but the malfunction cost Jango his life, and Mace Windu decapitated the Mandalorian with a single blow of his lightsaber. As the battle raged and the sudden arrival of clone troopers and battle droids flooded the arena and then set off to other battlefields across the planet's surface, the dust settled on the arena. Amidst the bodies and debris left behind on the battlefield, Boba Fett moved to recover his father's helmet, suddenly alone in the universe. Resting his head against the helmet, Fett swore revenge on the Jedi that killed his father. The Clone Wars.
Hey, boss, who's your girlfriend?
Shut up, Dengar. Hey, boss.
Boss, this is your boss.
You got a problem with that? My name's Boba, and this is Heisinger. I see you've already met Boskin lads. What's your name?
I don't have a name.
So it's gonna be like that, huh?
Look, kid, I don't take orders very well, especially from someone of your stature and obvious lack of experience.
She killed Oked, so she agreed to fill in.
On the fields of Geonosis, young Boba Fett stood over his father's lifeless body, the heat of battle already cooling. He buried Jango with grim resolve, the weight of his father's legacy falling squarely on his shoulders. All that remained of the man who had been his world was the Mandalorian armor and a book left behind by Jango, an instruction manual of sorts, prepared for the day his death might come. Boba, desperate and lost, sought refuge on Kamino, but the sterile halls of the cloning facility no longer offered safety. Without his father, nowhere was safe. It was a galaxy rife with hunters and betrayals. Aurra Sing, the cold and ruthless assassin, found him first. She was once a failed Jedi, now an agent of death for hire, and saw in Boba the opportunity for her own gain, knowing the fortune Jango must have left behind. Sing handed the boy over to Darth Tyrannus. In exchange, she was given Slave One, Jango's prized ship, though Boba would one day reclaim it. On the toxic wasteland of Raxus Prime, Boba was brought before Tyrannus, who is on his own dark quest for the Force Harvester, an ancient weapon of devastating power. Tyrannus saw potential in the boy, but he also saw an opportunity to use him. However, as fate would have it, a Republic strike interrupted Tyrannus' plan. In the chaos of battle, Boba managed to slip through the Sith Lord's grasp, narrowly escaping captivity. Captured by clone troopers instead, Boba was shipped off to an orphanage on Bespin. But Sing hadn't forgotten him. She had her own agenda, to unlock Jango Fett's vast fortune hidden on the banking planet of Argao. Sing rescued Boba, intending to use him as the key to Jango's credits. Yet, on Argao, the cruel hand of betrayal struck once more. A Claudite shapeshifter named Nuri swindled 500,000 credits of Boba's inheritance, leaving the boy with less than what his father had intended. But the rest of the fortune still lay within reach, and Boba, hardened by the galaxy's unforgiving nature, managed to outwit Sing when she attempted to seize the credits for herself. The following instructions left by Jango in the book, Fett would soon pursue a personal matter that had remained a constant source of pain, and a vendetta left so far unanswered. Hunting Jedi Master Mace Windu for the death of his father.
A dish served cold.
I wanted Windu. What are you doing here?
We can do this the difficult way or the simple way. The choice is yours.
Bosk, can you hear me?
Roger.
Execute the hostages if I give the word.
Unwise. You have already lost and you don't even know it.
I am prepared to kill you, the hostages, whatever it takes to get what Boba wants.
Sounds more like what you want.
The death of Jango Fett left Boba consumed by vengeance. While Windu was his primary target, he also blamed the Jedi as a whole. Reuniting with Aurra Sing, who continued to act as a surrogate mentor of sorts, along with the Trandoshan bounty hunter Bosch and Castus, a Klatooinian bounty hunter, Boba plotted Windu's assassination. Disguised as a clone youth brigade cadet, Lucky, Boba infiltrated the Star Destroyer Endurance, where Windu and Anakin Skywalker were stationed. Though distracted by the crew and a skeet shooting test, Boba eventually planted a bomb in Windu's quarters. The plan failed when a clone triggered it instead, putting the ship on high alert. Urged by Sing, Boba reluctantly destroyed the ship's reactor, severely damaging the cruiser, causing it to crash. Fett escaped the downed cruiser with the bounty hunters. When he learned Windu survived, Boba rigged his father's helmet with a bomb, but it was accidentally triggered by Anakin Skywalker instead. Aurra Sing, meanwhile, took hostages and executed survivors, including Admiral Killian, which Boba protested. Windu was still not dead, and Sing attempted to lure him by executing Clone Commander Pons in a holo-transmission to the Jedi, but Boba refused to do it himself, seeing the reflection of his father in the clone's own face. Fett was deeply affected by seeing the cold-hearted ruthlessness of Sing and the horrors he had caused in the pursuit of his vengeance. The mercenary group fled to Falorum, where Singh killed Castus for betraying them. Jedi Master Plo Koon and Ahsoka Tano traced them there, leading to a firefight. Boba was apprehended after Singh abandoned him in Slave 1, though she crashed it in the attempted escape, and the pirate Hondo Onoka convinced Fett to give him the remaining hostage's location after a lecture about his father Jango's honor. Boba and Bossk were imprisoned on Coruscant, where Boba confronted Windu but refused to forgive him, though he admitted he regretted his actions that led to the previous incident. Later, Boba helped trigger a prison break when Obi-Wan Kenobi, disguised as Reiko Hardeen, fought him to stage an escape. Dead or alive?
Keep moving, Jedi.
And turn my back on another bounty hunter?
If I wanted you dead, you'd be dead.
Later during the Clone Wars, a young Boba Fett led a team of bounty hunters, Latz, Razzie, Bossk, Dengar, C-21 Highsinger, and Oked, on a mission for the Belugans on Quarzite. Fett had damaged his father's Mandalorian helmet and adopted a different set of armor, but used his father's twin Westar 34 blaster. After a run-in with the dark acolyte Asajj Ventress, she also joined the crew on their mission. However, when Fett and Ventress discovered that the package they were protecting was in fact a woman being forced to marry the tyrant Oda Blank, Ventress was overcome with compassion for the woman, recalling her own past, and crossed Fett, knocking him out and leaving him behind. After Quarzite, Fett was alone and on the run in the galaxy. He eventually recovered Slave 1 and his father's armor from Hondo Onoka, secured a minor bounty, and found himself in the service and patronage of Jabba the Hutt. Jabba accepted him, repaying a favor Jango had done by killing Gardula the Hutt years earlier. While working for Jabba, Fett befriended a cook, Gabora, and his daughter, Igaba, who resized Jango's armor to fit the young bounty hunter. Boba Fett's first bounty assignment from Jabba the Hutt was to capture Gilramos Libkath. Competing against Dirge for the reward, Boba, already familiar with Libkath's location, pursued him to Mos Espa with help from Jabba's chef, Gabora, who gave Boba a jetpack. In Mos Espa, Boba outmaneuvered Dirge and trapped Libkath to a crashed starship. Using quick thinking, Boba triggered an explosion that killed Libkath, securing his proof of the bounty for Jabba. Later, Boba hunted down Jordvar, a Nogri assassin who betrayed Jabba. After killing him in the Dune Sea, Boba brought Jordvar's hands back as proof and was rewarded with his ring. Shortly after that, Jabba sent Boba on his first off-world mission to capture Techno-Union foreman Wat Tambor on Dagobah. Despite infiltrating Tambor's fortress, Boba's plan was foiled by General Grievous, forcing him to fake his death to escape. Boba later engaged in a dogfight with Asajj Ventress, and his ship was saved by Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker. The two briefly collaborated to repair Slave 1, and Boba repainted his armor green to distinguish himself from his father, Jango Fett. Boba also used the encounter to reveal to Skywalker that Count Dooku and Darth Tyrannus were the same person. He leveraged his information to get close to Mace Windu by asking to speak to Chancellor Palpatine directly. Escorted to Coruscant by Governor Tarkin, Boba had one final chance to confront Windu in Supreme Chancellor Palpatine's chambers. Despite engaging Windu in combat, The fight was interrupted by Palpatine. After paying Boba for his information regarding Dooku, despite already knowing this truth, he also revealed to the young bounty hunter that they had a mutual enemy in the Jedi. Palpatine sent him away, and Boba kept their meeting a secret. By the end of the Clone Wars, at the age of 13, Boba Fett had become a fully fledged Mandalorian bounty hunter.
Imperial Era. Boba Fett's reputation as a fearsome bounty hunter grew over the years. He acquired and upgraded multiple sets, at least 3, of Mandalorian armor, including one belonging to Jaster Muriel, his father's former mentor. Fett's green and red armor became iconic as he honed his skills, eventually becoming the most feared mercenary in the galaxy. During this time, Fett worked for Malorum, an Imperial Grand Inquisitor, tracking information about Padme Amidala. With fellow bounty hunter Deraran, Fett pursued Jedi on Balassa, quelling a rebel uprising. He also clashed with Jedi fugitives Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ferrus Olin, forcing them to flee. Creating a legend.
Are you Mandalorian?
I'm a simple man making his way through the galaxy, like my father before me.
In 15 BBY, Cisse From, a notorious crime lord, hired Boba Fett to eliminate the racing team of Jord Dusat and Thal Jobin after they destroyed From's superweapon, Trigon 1, leading to the collapse of the From gang. Fett, repaying an old favor, agreed to the job instead of collecting Jabba the Hutt's bounty on From. Fett's droid, BL-17, attempted to sabotage the team, but was destroyed. Fett pursued Jobin during the Bunta speeder race, but accidentally detonated a thermal detonator planted on Jobin's speeder, destroying Fett's ship instead. Furious, Fett turned the From gang over to Jabba. In 12 BBY, Fett led a mission for the Empire on Kamino to eliminate a clone rebellion and destroy any future threats to Imperial control. He also secured his father's DNA for the Empire. Around this time, Fett's reputation grew, with rumors linking him to the Mandalorian Jaster Muriel, a former journeyman protector like Fett. Fett later clashed with Han Solo and Lando Calrissian in several encounters, including a failed attempt to capture Solo in 5 BBY. Despite Jabba paying Fett not to kill Solo, Fett harbored a personal vendetta. In 4 BBY, Fett attempted to capture rebel Bria Theron and participated in the Battle of Thyfera, but abandoned the mission after he was paid a hefty ransom for the rebel instead. By 3 BBY, Fett was involved in various missions, including a plot to kidnap Braun Dooku and a confrontation with Jahan Cross. He also worked for Darth Vader on numerous occasions, including a mission to retrieve a mysterious box on the fiery world of Merrick's Minor. After a fierce battle with Vader, Fett narrowly escaped, stealing the Sith Lord's land speeder. Fett continued working as a bounty hunter, capturing various targets and working for Black Sun as well as other contractors, and had several more run-ins with Solo and Vader, solidifying his reputation as one of the galaxy's most feared and resilient bounty hunters. Fett would restore his relationship with Vader and the Empire, after helping Vader fend off an ambush by a host of other bounty hunters on the planet Darguli.
Family Man.
He has a healthy head start.
Find the woman and bring her to me. He will follow.
I'll need a squadron of stormtroopers. They won't be coming back.
The Empire will provide whatever you require.
At the age of 16, Boba Fett married Sentas Vel, who was 18, a Kafar bounty hunter, and they had a daughter, Alan Vel, a year later. Despite their love, Fett's dangerous lifestyle strained their relationship. Under the alias Jaster Muriel, Fett briefly served as a journeyman protector on Concord Dawn, but was exiled after killing a superior officer who raped Sentas. Despite his attempts to settle into a normal life, this and other dangerous events led to their divorce and Boba's estrangement from his family. Many years later, Aelin, resentful of her father's abandonment, would take on his identity and spend her life hunting him. Fett was eventually lured into a trap involving stolen photos of his family. Though he defeated the captor and his ex-wife Sentas, he allowed her to keep the photos instead of destroying them, to erase his past, acknowledging that while her wounds might heal, his never would. Working for Vader.
No disintegrations.
As you wish.
Vader, impressed by Fett's abilities in even challenging him in the past, contacted him for a very dangerous and very secretive mission. For his part, Boba had found himself during a period of financial difficulty and was romantically involved with a bounty hunter named Zasha, or X, on Nar Shaddaa. Fett and Zasha, in need of funds, traveled to Cato Neomoidia for a mission targeting the powerful Force wielder Starkiller. After surviving an attack from a creature nearly killed by Starkiller, Zasha abandoned the mission, but Fett, driven by pride and financial desperation, pressed on. He met with Vader on Kamino, learning Starkiller was a rogue clone of the Sith Lord's former apprentice. Tracking Starkiller from world to world, made easy by the destruction he tended to leave in his wake. During one such encounter with the heavily wounded but alive and angry Gorog that Starkiller had fought, Fett finished the enormous creature off by rocketing himself through the beast's chest with his jetpack. Fett was also given substantial command of Imperial forces during the hunt, Vader sparing no expense or resource to aid in the capture of his wayward clone apprentice. Next, Fett, tasked with capturing Juno Eclipse to lure Starkiller, infiltrated the rebel ship Salvation with Imperial troops. After a brief struggle and encounter with Starkiller, Fett successfully abducted Eclipse, revealing to her that her rescuer was a clone, not the real Starkiller. Despite her pleas, he delivered Eclipse to Vader on Kamino, negotiating future contracts before being forced to stay and confront Starkiller as a rebel fleet approached. During the ensuing battle, Fett narrowly escaped death several times, including a confrontation with a deranged clone of Merrick and surviving debris from a crashed rebel flagship. Discovering Vader had cloned him without consent, Fett killed the technician responsible and destroyed his clones. Still bound by his contract, Fett tried to eliminate Starkiller during a duel with Vader, but was intercepted by rebel forces, who he engaged in combat. Ultimately, Fett spared Starkiller, disturbed by the clone's deep connection with Eclipse. As the rebels captured Vader, Fett allowed their ship, Enslave One, tracking them to Dantooine, where he planned his next move, likely to free the powerful Sith Lord.
Return to Concord Dawn.
Dead or alive, I get paid either way.
Fett was once again targeted by the Empire, at least an autonomous governor of Concord Dawn, Purton, who had issued an order to kill Fett to his stormtroopers. The Imperial forces ambushed Fett while he was hunting another bounty on the planet Bendak. Boba appeared to be killed in the attack, and news of his alleged death was telegraphed across the galaxy. Fett survived, however, and used the cover of his death to anonymously track down his would-be killers, hunting the stormtrooper commanders that executed the order, one by one, discovering the plot aimed at killing him. Fett also encountered Connor Freeman and assumed his identity. Freeman was the son of a clone deserter personally executed by Jango Fett many years earlier, making Freeman genetically Boba's son as well. Boba also helped the real Freeman with his own debts and had his arm replaced when he lost it in an explosion. When Fett learned that whoever was behind the plot to have him killed knew of his connections to his ex-wife and daughter, Fett commissioned Freeman to find them and help protect them against any potential retaliatory attacks. Boba then continued to moonlight as a stormtrooper and infiltrate the Imperial ranks, though he was found out and had to dispatch a number of stormtroopers capturing their officer, Captain Ewes, for interrogation. Using poison, the stormtrooper captain finally revealed that it was Governor Purton who ordered the attack, as revenge for Fett having killed his son during a previous bounty mission in the past. Ready for the final confrontation, Boba Fett, Connor Freeman, and Sintas Vel confronted the wayward governor, with Freeman delivering the killing blow to the Imperial. Vel and Connor had made a romantic connection during the chaos of the events, and the two shared a kiss to the chagrin of Fett, who Connor reminded Vel was his ex-wife. Freeman also offered Fett one of the governor's teeth as a symbolic gift, as Fett was known to collect trophies from dangerous monsters and beasts, which Connor stated the Imperial governor was such a creature. Dual existence.
Make no mistake, we are not allies. I know, Jedi. I know what you are capable of, and I do not pity your fate.
Fett continued to serve his dual loyalties to the crime lord Jabba the Hutt and the Imperial government. Between chasing rebel spies, acquiring exotic artifacts for Jabba against rival Hutts, and taking on independent contracts to capture or kill targets, including rebel mercenaries. Fett also had a long-standing pseudo-nemesis in Han Solo, who by chance or virtue Fett would sometimes help, as they were both in the employ of Jabba. Fett began to begrudgingly respect the smuggler, at least for his tenacity. However, when Solo's relationship with Jabba soured, Fett had no qualms about becoming an enforcer for the gangster, accompanying him to intimidate the smuggler in a docking bay on Tatooine. Fett would soon become enemies with Solo, both on account of the debts to the Hutt, as well as Solo joining the rebel cause after the destruction of the Death Star. Fett also had run-ins with other prominent rebels, while doing the Empire's bidding, including confrontations with Rogue Squadron. Sintas Vel would also continue to haunt him, as every time an enemy discovered their connection, it put her life and their daughters at risk, including attempts of blackmail and assassinations, which usually ended in the deaths of everyone involved.
Bounty Hunter War. Despite Boba Fett's notoriety and success, he had never joined the Bounty Hunters Guild, which he looked down on with contempt for their rules and saw it as a crutch for inferior hunters. Despite this, he was offered a substantial amount of money by a mysterious benefactor to infiltrate the guild to destroy it from within. The guild was headed by the Trandoshan Kradosk, the father of another notorious bounty hunter, Bosk. Fett carefully engineered a civil war within the guild, as the forces split between older and younger hunters. Boba would later discover that the bounty was set by the head of Black Sun, Prince Zizor, who had also made a deal with powerful criminal broker named Balance Sheet. In the end, Fett managed to destroy the guild and walked away with at least half of a considerable sum of credits after Balance Sheet had double-crossed him, something Fett vowed to remediate in the future. Fett later continued his work with the Empire, including various tasks that would take him to the graveyard of Alderaan, and hunting such notable targets as Kal Katarn, Han Solo, Admiral Akbar, and more on the Emperor's Most Wanted list. During this time, Boba was known to subcontract some of his work to spacers looking to gain experience or make some coin. Securing Solo.
Lord Vader, you may take Captain Solo to Jabba the Hutt after I have Skywalker.
He's no good to me dead.
After Vader took a personal interest in tracking down Luke Skywalker, Boba Fett advised the Sith Lord that locating the fugitive Han Solo would help in this endeavor. Fett managed to locate the Millennium Falcon, fleeing the Empire, disguising itself amongst refuse, being abandoned in space. Fett tracked the wayward ship to Cloud City on Bespin. Alerting Vader of the development, the Sith Lord dispatched stormtroopers to infiltrate the city and force Lando Calrissian, a known previous associate of Solo's, into baiting the rogue into a trap. Using a carbonite freezing process, normally used to store and ship Tibanna gas, but in this case would be used to ensnare a Jedi. Solo, Leia, Chewbacca, and C-3PO were captured by Imperial forces, and Vader tested the freezing process on Solo to ensure carbonite freezing would not kill its true target, Luke Skywalker. The test worked, and a frozen Solo was given over to the custody of Boba. Fett would be the beneficiary of the bounty on Solo, placed on him by Jabba the Hutt. In a turn of grim humor, Fett named the frozen Han an art piece, man in carbonite, and would sell it as decor for the Hutt's palace for an additional fee than just the bounty which the Hutt would gladly pay. Though the transaction would not occur for several months, as Fett had other business to attend first. After capturing Solo, Boba Fett betrayed his partner, suspected to be either Bossack or IG-88, and took the entire bounty. Rebel intelligence led Lando Calrissian and Chewbacca to Stennis to track Bosk, but their mission failed to bring them closer to Fett. Meanwhile, IG-88C and D intercepted Fett in the Tattoo system, attempting to steal Solo's carbonite-encased body. Fett destroyed both droids, though his ship, Slave 1, was damaged, forcing him to land on Gaul for repairs. Dash Rendar found Fett and damaged Slave 1 further during a brief skirmish. At a cantina on Gaul, Bosk and Zukas tried to negotiate with Fett, but Fett refused, escaping the trap they had set. Meanwhile, Forlom and his henchmen breached Slave 1 to steal Solo. but Fett swiftly eliminated them quickly and efficiently. However, the Millennium Falcon had tracked the Slave One piloted by Chewbacca and Lando Calrissian, trying to take Solo back as well. However, Fett quickly escaped in his ship. Later, 4-LOM repaired himself and summoned Bosk, who sent Zuckuss and a crew to board Slave One. Fett turned the tables, killing most of the intruders and planting a bomb in their shuttle. When Bosk's co-pilot inspected the shuttle, it exploded, destroying Bosk's ship, the Hound's Tooth, leaving Bosk stranded and cursing Fett as Slave One jumped to hyperspace. Fett hid Slave One in a derelict Corvette, where he kept Zuckuss prisoner and hinted at further plans before heading to Tatooine.
Death. When Boba Fett arrived on Tatooine with Han Solo, another group of bounty hunters awaited him. To outsmart them, Fett disguised Zuckuss in spare armor and chained him to a speeder bike, making it appear as if he and Solo were en route to Jabba's palace. As the hunters chased the decoy, Fett slipped into the palace and presented Solo to Jabba, who rewarded him with 250,000 credits, far more than the original bounty. Jabba was so pleased that he asked Fett to stay, anticipating that Solo's friends might come for a rescue. Fett became Jabba's champion in the palace's demolition games, drawing crowds and large bets. However, when Leia, Chewbacca, Lando, and Luke Skywalker launched a rescue mission, they were captured. Jabba sent Leia to Fett's room to entertain him, but Fett, adhering to his own moral code, declined and instead spent the night debating with her about the rebellion and the Empire. Fett remained vigilant, watching as Luke fought and killed Jabba's Rancor. When Jabba sentenced Luke, Han, and Chewbacca to the Sarlacc pit, Fett saw an opportunity to capture Luke for a large reward. However, Jabba refused to negotiate. During the ensuing chaos, as Luke mounted a rescue, Fett attempted to stop him, but was blindsided by Han, who accidentally triggered Fett's jetpack, sending him into the Sarlacc's maw. This event led to the slang term Boba Eyes, meaning to make a foolish mistake that jeopardizes a deal, inspired by Fett's infamous fall into the Sarlacc, an ignominious end to an otherwise legendary bounty hunter. Or was it?
Who are you?
I am Boba Fett.
Boba is dead.
I was left for dead on the sands of Tatooine, like you.
And now, a public service announcement. Galaxy's Most Wanted. Luke Skywalker, wanted for terrorism, destruction of Imperial property, murder, and speeding. Han Solo, wanted for illicit smuggling, proceeds of crime, aiding and abetting criminal vandalism, and tax evasion. Celia Durasha, wanted for sedition, conspiracy to commit terror, and intellectual property theft. Corette Bond, wanted for rebellion, murder, terrorism, and hit and run. Rocky Citra, wanted for being a Jedi, attempted murder, and purveyor of pro-Jedi propaganda and misinformation. Talon Card, wanted for grand larceny, theft over 5,000 credits, smuggling, and making derogatory posts about the Emperor on the HoloNet. Wanted, dead, or alive. If you encounter any of these high-value offenders, A substantial credit reward awaits. Call now.
Nobody now give you no break. Police now give you no break. That old soldier man now give you no break. Not even your eyes now give you no breaks. Well, hey, bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Welcome aboard the Millennial Falcon. This is Christian.
And this is Jordan.
Today we are talking about one of our favorite topics in the entire galaxy and fan favorite, Boba Fett. But before we get into that, let's get some housekeeping out of the way.
So we just want to thank all of our new patrons, the new guys that signed up. You get access to the bonus episode. You get, a status symbol of being a patron, which I know it's
comes with a lot of gravitas.
Yeah, it's very sought after. Anyways, so thanks to some of our new patrons, Jask, sorry if I'm saying that incorrectly, and Unique Hamburger was his handle, the other guy. So we got those two new patrons. Thank you very much, guys. And if anyone else wants to be a supporter of the show, you can for just $3 a month. You can get access to all the bonus content. You can also do single buys of bonus episodes on Patreon as well for $3 if you didn't want to do like the monthly thing. And we also, I've added another tier for ad-free listening. So if you have the $5 tier or higher, you will get ad-free listening on all of our new episodes. Unfortunately, at this time, I'm not going to go back and add all the old episodes, but I'm assuming most of you guys are pretty caught up anyway if you're a patron. But yeah, all the new episodes will have ad-free listening uploaded onto the Patreon, so you can go listen to that and just a little extra bonus if you're the $5 member. If you're a $3 member, you just get access to the bonus episodes. But yeah, anyways, we also take single donations. If you wanted to send some credits our way, starlorspodcast@gmail.com, and you can send them there. We are also selling merch on Redbubble, so you can go down, look at the link in the description of the show. We'll have that there as well.
Support the advertisers that support us.
Yes, exactly. As well as rate and review the show. If especially Spotify and Apple Podcasts, those are the two big ones where rating and review really helps get the show to more people. It'll show up in people's feed, and they'll see it more. So yeah, if you want to rate and review the show, that is great. Also, we are on YouTube as well, so go follow us on YouTube, give us a like or subscribe. YouTube does help get us in front of a few more eyeballs. So
I hear it's a war zone right now, so we'd love to be part of that.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, check us out on YouTube. We're on, all our major social medias. We are on Discord, link in the description. Link should work. I've checked it multiple times, and
it's the number one message we get from people.
Should be working. Again, if you're clicking on an old link that we have posted before, but I think I've actually replaced all the
old links.
Yeah, all the old links with the proper working one. But if you are having any trouble, just send us a DM on any of our social medias. Instagram at thestarlordspodcast.com, X at the Starlords, Facebook, if you just go facebook.com/StarLordsPodcast. We are there, and email starlordspodcast@gmail.com, and you can reach out to us there. So we enjoy interacting with all the fans, hearing your comments, corrections,
fights.
That kind of stuff. Definitely send it to us. Also, on that note, send us your collections, your Star Wars collections. If you have a sweet Lego collection or a toy
action
collection
figures,
or book collection, what have you. If you're into cosplay, show us your cosplay. I think that's pretty sweet too. If you have any fan fiction, we've been working on some I am working on fan fiction. I do have one fan fiction episode on the Patreon, but I am working on more. It's just this next one's kind of long, and it's a lot of editing, so I'm trying to get through it. Any headcanon, in-universe ad ideas, also you can send to us. We love to hear that. We've posted a few of the listeners' in-universe ads on our show before, so we'd like to do some more. And other than that, just reach out to us. We love to hear from you guys. Connect with us, follow us on the social media, and it should be fun. Talking all things Star Wars.
All right. Well, we're currently on the prison planet of Midas 7. There are a great number of inmates here who are former bounties captured by the infamous Boba Fett, and we're just getting his life story and opinions from all these galactic citizens of high repute. Boba Fett. Let's start with the name.
The etymology.
What's in the name? It's interesting because there's a lot of theories bounced around what Boba Fett's name means, as a lot of Star Wars names. Some are pretty on the nose, General Grievous. Others are a little harder to find
Darth
the
Tyrannus.
origin for. In Fett's case, it's kind of up in the air. Boba means in different languages different things. In Spanish, it's kind of meant like stupid or dumb. Spanish and like Portuguese. In German, I think it means cool. In Russian, it means warrior, man of honor, which might probably more align with what we're looking for. Everyone's familiar with boba tea, which actually is for those pearls that are in the drink, which actually literally translates to like big-breasted woman, which I don't think was the inspiration for Fett. But it's hard to say. I haven't found anything definitive about what his name comes from. However, one thing for sure is that American Graffiti, one of George Lucas's prior movies about like hot rod culture in the United States, was
very
a character.
Americana, that film. Yeah,
there was a character named Bob Falfa, who's a drag racer and later San Francisco police officer, and he was played by Harrison Ford. So people suspect that Bob Falfa turned into Boba Fett.
Okay.
So his name origin might not be as cool as as having some mysterious meaning, but
yeah, he's just sort of doing a little twist on names of people he already knows.
Yeah, but it's hard to say for sure. The Russian one seems to align pretty well. All right, Boba Fett in the fandom essentially probably exists in like two forms. And it's kind of like divided by the release of the Attack of the Clones, episode 2. Big fan favorite, super mysterious. A lot of different people wanted to fill in his backstory prior to the Attack of the Clones, and then once Lucas laid down what his backstory and origin was, then he kind of evolved into a completely different character. So the Fett that existed prior to Attack of the Clones is very mysterious always. His face was, I think, revealed once as some kind of like alien that was like kind of never really official. It was like some artist like going off on his own thing. And then in the joke comic Tag and Bink, they showed his face, which was, I thought it was always pretty close to Tamora Morrison, but apparently it wasn't supposed to be. So obviously these are non-canon appearances, but more so his origin and backstory. He was described as Jaster Muriel, as his original name, that he adopted the name Boba Fett, and that he was like a lawman, a protector of Concord Dawn.
Yeah.
A journeyman protector. Sorry, that's the word that was escaping me. He's very black and white morality, very by the book. That was like the original, not the original Inception, but the Inception that a lot of authors kind of gave Boba after he appeared in Empire Strikes Back, and his real first appearance is actually the Christmas special.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
It was the first time he actually showed up because it came out first, and then Empire Strikes Back shows up.
Yeah.
And in the Christmas special, he's wearing that like more white monotone suit because that was the original concept art for him, and then they went with the green and yellow and red.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of a far cry from his established outlaw character now.
Yeah,
that's like I mean, yes, he's a bounty hunter, but he works for organized crime.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas like his original depiction, he was like he had like a very strict code of honor.
Yeah.
Like even like called people out for like relations outside of marriage.
Fornication.
Yes, fornication, exactly. Regardless of which version of Fett, one thing does exist still through it was that kind of Western flair that, you know,
100%.
Totally inspired by like Fistful of Dollars, you know, Good, Bad, and the Ugly, The Mysterious Stranger, The Man with No Name. They even added Spurs sound effects whenever he walks. If you listen closely, he's not wearing spurs, but the spur sound is there every time he takes a step. So yeah, it's definitely that fills that void, or that Western archetype.
Yeah. Especially the dynamic between like him and Solo.
Yeah.
It's sort of like a very Western nemesis.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like the two guys that are always running into each other and dueling at noon kind of thing. After episode 2 came out, he was left alone for a while, but his youth started to get filled in a lot by particularly Dave Filoni's Clone Wars. Took an interest in him, and that's where a lot of the stories with him and Asajj Ventress, and the assassin girl, what's her name? Bald.
Oh, I don't remember.
Ventress looking.
Yeah.
Failed Jedi. Oh my gosh, it's on the tip of my brain. Aurra Sing, and her kind of adoption of Boba Fett and his early like runs, Attack on Mace Windu, all that kind of stuff comes from the Clone Wars stuff. I don't particularly like that characterization. Boba kind of comes off as like angry and petulant, not really intimidating, and I think it lessens what could have been a cool story about like vengeance and like going after Windu and stuff. It gets really kind of cheeseballed.
Traumatized orphan boy.
Yeah.
Yeah, they definitely could have gone for like more, I don't know if you're familiar with Red Dead Redemption.
Yes.
The more Red Dead Redemption angle where, he goes on this long quest to avenge his father or whatever.
Right, exactly. And revenge stories are classic Western.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so like very much, I think, is undercut by these like little adventure stories that he kind of gets slotted into, and he kind of looks like a doofus in them. Like he gets taken advantage of. And like,
and he's a little too young almost to have like a good... It's kind of hard to believe, you know?
Yeah, well, in that case, like you scale the story to not make him look like an imbecile, right? Like, he could have a challenging upbringing, you know, fighting other street gang kids, right? Like, you could tell a cool, badass story and make him not look like a joke, and build into that vengeance story and like how that search for revenge. What does that mean for him? What does that turn him into, right? Which I think is a wasted opportunity for his youth, right? The other thing Boba Fett kind of suffers from is because he's such a cool character, everyone wants to use him in their stories. So he's like slotted into so many adventures. He's all over the place. Sometimes gets a little bit dwarfed because every hero has to beat him. But he's also meant to be the big bad of your story, right? So is the Worf effect for anyone not familiar, kind of like when your strong figure ends up looking weak because he's constantly beaten by someone that's supposed to be stronger, right? So, and he just ends up looking weak if that happens enough times, right? Like if your tough guy keeps getting beat up, is he really the tough guy? So a little bit of that kind of happens to Boba, as well as getting screwy with timelines and things because he appears in all these different places, so people have to justify how he gets slotted in everywhere. He does
busy guy.
So actually, a cool and interesting way that a lot of people did deal with that is that there's quite a few Boba Fett imposters out there, and we'll tell their stories too. But there's different like either Mandalorians or clones. Or, you know, like his daughter even assumes his identity at some point.
Okay.
So you could theoretically slot in all the stories. They're all true, but are they all really Boba Fett?
Right.
And it also helps to build his legend because...
Then he doesn't look as weak.
Right, exactly.
It wasn't actually him.
Right. that was just some knockoff, right? So yes, he does suffer from a lot of that, but also they kind of justify it. But it takes like none of that was intentional. Obviously, it's people adapting to the stories that they were given. Anyways, it is cool because everything Mandalorian does originate with Boba Fett. He is actually like the archetype for the armor, the culture, the history. Jango is actually retroactively created for Boba Fett as his backstory, but Boba Fett did come first. His relationship with the clones too is interesting, and I think could have been explored more, where he's always depicted as not liking them. He doesn't see them as like any kind of siblings. He has no attachment to them whatsoever. He kind of almost hates them. He kills them and he goes on like the opposite side, right? But
yeah, like he kind of views them as illegitimate siblings almost.
Yeah, something like that. Which there's so many angles you could play. You could play like the royal bloodline, kind of like who's the real inheritor of his father's legacy angle,
right?
But that's never really the angle that they take. You could take like
that's a bit of a stretch.
They take the weird angle of like he sees his father's face, but they're not really his father. That's kind of strange, right? Like, I think there's a lot of depth that could be pulled, and you could take it in a lot of different ways, or you could even have like a fraternity that he builds around these clones, right? Like, yeah, this is what's left of my father's legacy. I want to preserve them and help them, right?
These are all the fake Boba Fetts.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, so anyways, it's kind of a complicated relationship. In the universe, he is depicted as pretty much looking down on the clones.
Yeah.
Even though he is a clone himself. And that could mess with your head maybe if you're like, I'm also disposable.
I mean, to be fair, though, he is a bit of a different clone than the other clones.
In the sense that he's completely like unmodified.
Yeah. There was some specific genetic uniqueness to him that's different than the
Sure, then he just looks at them as like projects he needs to help.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's because I'm a clone sympathizer. But you could take the opposite angle, but if you're going to make him hate the clones, make it like a legitimate story, right? Like delve into the psychology of what that is and why that is, which I could totally understand. Just make it a story, right? They just mention it and talk about it in the periphery, but they don't really delve into it. Another huge disappointment with Boba Fett potential is the Disney version of Boba Fett. The Book of Boba Fett was an absolute wasted opportunity. Terrible, terrible show. Not to give too much away, because we will review the series eventually, do like a play-by-play. But
I found it like probably the most boring. My biggest critic is just it was a snooze fest to me. Like I was not interested in
for many reasons. I think it fails, including being a snooze fest, being like 2G rated.
Yeah.
Boba Fett not even being a real character in it.
Yeah, he wasn't Boba Fett. It was
right.
Just,
exactly.
I've always said this about the Boba Fett is they sort of came in, brought Boba Fett in after realizing the success of The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And then wrote Boba Fett.
The Mandalorian should have been Boba Fett.
The Mandalorian really was Boba Fett's character. Yeah. The Mandalorian is more Boba Fett than Boba Fett is. So yeah, it's sort of just like, but they sort of retroactively like included him. It was like, oh, this is so successful, maybe people do want a Boba Fett character.
But now they used up all his character traits, so they got to do something.
Yeah, they didn't want to do like a direct copy clone of Mandalorian, so they had to do Boba Fett. It just was kind of not very well executed at all.
Yeah, and even like the general story arc could be interesting of him becoming a crime lord, but he tries to become a sheriff and a crime lord at the same time, and it just doesn't. None of it makes sense.
Yeah,
it just doesn't.
A lot of it.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work at all.
No, and Boba Fett suddenly like not being ruthless, and it's brutal.
Having all this compassion for like poor street kids. Yeah, I don't think so.
Super glad that they brought Tamora Morrison back, but.
Yeah,
for this, it's kind of a travesty.
Yeah.
Also, I'll add that a total wasted opportunity too. They could have done for like a young Boba Fett story. Is the actor that actually played child Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones, Daniel Logan, does actually still have a passing resemblance to Tamora Morrison.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, he's like he's got to be in his probably 30s now. But like in his 20s and 30s when like Star Wars, 5-10 years ago, if they committed to like a young Boba Fett series with Daniel Logan and Tamora Morrison, and you could jump timelines, you could go back to like Clone Wars era with him, and then you could jump in the future with Tamora Morrison. 10 out of 10 would watch that show. Disney just squanders every opportunity they have, and these actors are just getting older. Like it's going to be impossible in the future.
And I think like Tamora Morrison's like what, in his 50s,
probably 60s. I would guess.
He might even be in like close to 60. When I feel like his actor was
63.
His actor. So he would have been like 59 or something when the show came out.
Yeah,
but he's probably already too old to play Boba Fett at that point. Like I don't think Boba Fett wouldn't have been more than 40.
Like it depends on when you said it. Like you could tell a story of an old Boba Fett, almost like a King Conan, like retired.
No, but the setting is like 5 years after.
Yeah. You're talking specifically about the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah, I'm
like
talking
escaping the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah,
yes.
I'm talking about the Book of Boba Fett. He's all like already way too old.
Getting too old to be himself back then. Yes. Yeah, exactly. So like that, you can't go back and fix this. Like they just pissed this opportunity away, and there's no recovering it now. Like I said, you could always do like an old Boba Fett story. That would be cool. I'd watch that if it was good.
Yeah. They could never mind. I won't beleaguer the point too much, but
just know that it was a waste and they could have done so much more, and that they should hire us to do their stuff. A couple of points too. I mean, Boba Fett we could talk about forever. Honestly, he is a fan favorite, and there's so much to digest. And we will do a second part. Obviously, he is not dead. Spoilers. Even in Legends, he also did not die in the Sarlacc pit.
Yeah, even before I've read that. So even like after Return of the Jedi, when it's kind of like one of his biggest appearances. You kind of forget he doesn't even show up that much in the two movies.
He didn't exist in A New Hope. They retroactively inserted him in the scene with Jabba at the Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, like he isn't there that much.
He has 4 lines in Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah. And yet, even back then, back in the 80s, the Boba Fett toy was like one of the highest best-selling toys. Like people love
him.
It's just like so funny, like no character development, just like this dude,
a cool background, quiet, strong, silent type.
Yeah,
people love that, man. That's an archetype.
Totally. Yeah. And you wonder if they maybe wrote too much about him.
Sometimes it's good to leave the mystery.
Yeah, should they have just left it like only included Boba Fett in like sprinkled him in as a side character in the odd story rather than making like
the
a
main
full character and just like kind of left him that way. You know?
And you never really know, right? Like you never know what his intentions are or his motives. And
exactly.
That's always left up to the viewer to imagine. And that's also an angle you definitely play. And that was the original kind of play with him.
Yeah.
And then even again, not to get too crazy, but like they try to replicate this, right? They create these other characters with no backstory, no name, and be like, throw them out to the fans. The fans will love it. And they don't typically take to them like they did with Boba Fett because that was like actually natural. You can't engineer this kind of like fandom for a character that may not necessarily, I will say, will not deserve it, but he's cool. I like him. I'm not gonna lie. I'm totally in that group of people.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Another comment too about Boba Fett's starship is not actually called Boba Fett's starship. It is called Slave One. I don't care if you own the property. It has and always has been Slave One.
Yes.
Which was a Fire Spray 31 class patrol ship. And they don't even call it that. Like they just have no respect for the character.
Yeah.
Just one story beat I did want to touch on really quick too is his duel with Darth Vader. Very cool moment. I think everyone wanted to see that happen. Darth Vader, a big fan favorite. Boba Fett, a big fan favorite. Happens in a comic book series. Boba Fett actually shoots Darth Vader in the head, but because Darth Vader's wearing his helmet, it protects him from the blast. And then Vader uses the Force pretty much to trounce Fett. And then Fett uses his tactics and guile to get out of the situation. Which is, again, it speaks to the character being like adaptive and like he has all like the whole multi-tool, almost like a Batman thing, right?
Yeah.
So he's got a tool or a weapon for the job that he's currently engaged in.
He's almost like, dare I say, like a John Wick kind of character. Like, it can get beat up a lot, can take a lot of punishment, but is also extremely dangerous, and you don't want to mess
resilient.
with it.
Yeah. And I think that's a fair depiction because sometimes when you see him with that armor, he's always like got scars and stuff, which speaks to like he's taking the hit. It's not like he's perfect and doesn't take damage, right?
Yeah.
He just is able to like be this force of nature that just keeps getting back up and continuing on hunting you, which is terrifying if you're the guy that he's chasing. But yeah, overall, the character Boba Fett. The mysterious character of Boba Fett, 10 out of 10. All the stories and backstory, you start to kind of lose that mystique and that heroism. He starts to decline a little bit in coolness. Doesn't help for his reputation.
100%. Yeah.
To be fair, on screen, also his death is pretty, pseudo-death is...
it's pretty unceremonious, for sure.
Exactly. Which speaks to what the character was. Like, he was actually never intended to be this, like, great badass.
Yeah.
But he just became that way, so...
Absolutely.
Let's say a mixed legacy.
For sure. So, should we go into the mailbag?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, we got one from Ryan. This is his message. So he says, hey, dudes, been listening for a while and mostly lurking on your Spotify. Thanks. That's what, as people do. But was just listening to the Alderaan episode. And there is a historical parody with the Death Star arriving and firing on them at the start of hostilities in Europe, a few days prior to a German battleship had made port in peace in Danzig, and the onset of combat operations. It opened fire on the garrisons in the city and debarked troops. well behind the front lines. And the Polish had an idea that hostilities were imminent, but still didn't turn them away or fire on them till they were at point blank range. So he's just sort of making a historical contrast with what happened in World War II, where the Polish didn't actually think the Germans were going to attack, and they ended up doing it. The same as, like, I think we were talking in the episode about Alderaan, how the Death Star just shows up and no one really puts up a defense or stops them, because they assume they're part of the Empire, and they're
you're a state within.
Yeah, and then they get destroyed. So Ryan is just sort of making that contrast here. I don't know if that's what Lucas was thinking, but it's an interesting thought experiment. I don't know, Christian.
I don't necessarily see like the 1-to-1 relation, but like surprise attacks have happened historically, right?
Yeah.
Like, what better way to take out your enemy than to show up as if you're mundane and then open fire?
Yeah, and there is, like, the attack on Poland was, I think, surprise to a lot. I mean, not totally a surprise, because Hitler wanted Danzig for a long time, but prior, like, for a couple of years prior to then, Hitler was trying to make an alliance with Poland. He wanted this, like, anti-Soviet alliance with Poland and Italy and stuff.
Yeah, but a lot of his also alliances are probably going to break down in the future anyways. Like, they were a means to an end, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, so, I could kind of see what he's saying. And then we got another one from Jordan, not this Jordan, but a different Jordan. And he
an inferior Jordan.
Yeah. All of them are inferior. He says, it would be fantastic if you guys did a what if episode. Would love to hear your thoughts on what the Empire would be like if Padme had survived and Anakin didn't try to take the high ground. Love the show. It's almost a daily listen on my way to work. Well, thanks, Jordan. We have done like an Infinities episode, which is kind of a what if, but we've also been talking about maybe doing some bonus like Star Wars alt histories, which I think would be like a fun thought experiment to do. Like what would happen if X didn't happen or X did happen. If anyone has ideas of like a Star Wars alternate history that we could like explore or you'd want to explore, definitely send us a message. Christian, do you have any thoughts on if Padme had survived and Anakin didn't take the high ground?
There's some cool artwork actually depicting like the Imperial royal family. So it depends what you take. Would Anakin have fallen altogether? Would Padme join Anakin on the dark path? Would Anakin even take, like, the whole thing about him going down the dark path was to save Padme. So if that's not an issue, then who knows? But so it depends like how it comes about. But like I said, there's some really cool art that depicts the Imperial royal family where you have a Padme, Anakin, Luke, and Leia, but dressed in like very official Imperial garb. They look really good.
Yeah.
I really like that idea, like a dark family.
I would also assume that Anakin would still have fully gone to the dark side, but he probably would kill Palpatine and
take the Empire
for himself.
As seen in the alternative ending of the Revenge of the Sith video game.
Yeah.
Where he actually does that.
Yeah, exactly. Because Vader's suit, as we have explored in the Vader episode that we've done way back when, Vader's suit in a lot of ways is like his collar, right?
Yeah,
it's his
meant
leash.
to hold him back.
Like the Anakin's like terrible wounds were sort of a gift to Palpatine because it was a way for Palpatine to
restrain him.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it would be a totally interesting thing to see. I think Anakin would 100% kill Palpatine and would take over.
He even says as much too.
Yeah.
His intention would be to take Padme with him. Now, again, like, is it true to Padme's character that she would give up on all her ideals? You know, the whole reason she dies is because she confronts Anakin and says she can't be with him like this. So, you know, what kind of manipulation do you have to do to those characters to make them go along with it?
I mean, he could just use fear and threat and be like, you stay with me or I kill the kids or something like that, right?
Maybe.
Like he could just be like, force her to stay with him.
Yeah, which it doesn't tell a particularly good story.
No,
though.
it's pretty dark.
Yeah.
But
the alternative to that story is like the happy family version where Anakin remains a Jedi and the chosen one, and again is a nice happy ending.
Exposes Palpatine, and Palpatine gets arrested, and Order 66 never happens or something.
And then you have like an Uncle Obi-Wan raising Luke and Leia, and they're all like a fun happy family again. Seeing fan artwork of that, it's cool. It's interesting. It's a nice, noble, bright, happy ending. But where's the drama? Where's the story then? Right? The whole story is about this fall and the rise of the Empire and everything. So I think you lose a lot of that. I do like the Imperial Dark family.
Yeah.
Very much. I think you could tell some cool stories with that. But yeah. The tough thing, again, I've said this before, is with alt history, alt history is hard enough on its own because you have to control for so many variables and factors. And it gets even harder in a fictional universe because you have all these variables, and then you have the variables of like, well, this character could have or should have or intervened, right? Like it becomes infinitely more complex. I'm not a big fan of alt histories unless you have a very clear narrative you want to tell with your alt history. You want to tell a good story of Anakin Skywalker being good, right?
Yeah.
Or like without that underlying element, you kind of have to start with what do you want to tell, not, well, if this happened, then this would, not the chain of event type thing, because anything can happen then, right? It's fiction, right?
Yeah.
An asteroid comes by and blows up Coruscant, right? Or hits the Death Star. What then would happen, right? Like, literally, you could summon any force and change any detail.
Yeah.
So, again, it's hard with like I said, even with history, alt history. It can be fun, but like at least you have some controls and variables. Like, well, we know what this person did or what they were like or what resources they had.
Yeah.
But with fiction, like, who's to say, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think you could still try and like keep true to the character that is already established and create your alt history.
Sure, yeah. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I find it very hard to do.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, that's reach out to us, guys. Let us know what you think. Make sure,
especially this Boba Fett episode. I'm sure a lot of people have opinions. So
give us your Boba opinion. All right. See you later.